Disclaimer: this video explores mature emotional themes involving complex family dynamics. It does not contain explicit content, but viewer discretion is advised. It was a quiet Sunday night, one of those rare evenings when everything feels still. The dishes were done, the laundry was folded, and for once, there was no buzz of work emails or overdue errands nagging at the back of my mind. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket over my lap, half watching a documentary on polar explorers. Nothing dramatic. Just background noise. Beside me sat Jeremy, my stepson. 22, college senior, recently back home for spring break. He had this habit of stretching out across the couch like he owned it, one leg dangling off the edge, phone in hand, but not really scrolling. We'd grown comfortable around each other over the last 5 years. Not best friends, but not strangers either. We shared small talk, inside jokes, and a mutual appreciation for Thai takeout. I married his dad, Malcolm, when Jeremy was 17. Not an easy age. But to his credit, Jeremy never made me feel like an outsider. He had a kind face, those tired green eyes that always looked like they were thinking too hard. Even when we didn't talk much, there was this unspoken ease between us. Respect. Space. Occasionally, even warmth. Malcolm wasn't home that night. Late shift at the hospital, so it was just the two of us. The remote was somewhere under a couch cushion, and neither of us felt like moving. So we sat in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward, just there. And then, out of nowhere, Jeremy spoke. "Can I ask you something?" I glanced at him, waiting for the usual, "Where's the Wi-Fi password again? Did we ever fix the dishwasher?" But his voice wasn't casual. There was a tension behind it. Like he was standing at the edge of something big and wasn't sure whether to jump. "Sure," I said, muting the TV. He didn't look at me. Just stared straight ahead at the screen like he was still watching it, even though it had frozen mid-frame. He rubbed his palms together, took a breath, and said something I was absolutely not prepared for. It wasn't rude. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even inappropriate. But it landed with the weight of something deep, something old. Like a door I didn't know existed had just creaked open, and suddenly, I could feel the air from the other side rushing in. My heart started to race. I tried to keep my face neutral, but internally, I was flipping through every possible reason he might have asked that. Was he serious? Did Malcolm know? Did I know? I thought I understood our family. I thought I knew where the boundaries were drawn. But in a single sentence, Jeremy moved them. No warning, no lead-in. Just, there it was. And I couldn't unhear it. I stared at him, not sure what to say. My throat was dry. My pulse loud. He finally turned to face me, his expression calm, even vulnerable, but with the kind of clarity that told me this wasn't a passing thought. He'd been holding onto it for a while. Maybe even years. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, we heard the front door unlock. Malcolm was home. And just like that, whatever we were about to say, whatever was about to change between us, froze in place, waiting to finish its sentence. The front door clicked open, and Malcolm's familiar voice called out from the hallway. Jeremy and I both turned instinctively, like nothing had happened. Like our living room wasn't suddenly holding its breath. "Hey, you two," Malcolm said, stepping into view and setting his bag down. He looked exhausted, still in his hospital scrubs, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't know you'd both be up." Jeremy stood up quickly. "Hey, Dad." I was just heading upstairs. I watched him walk off without another word, not even a glance back. I wanted to stop him, ask him to stay, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, trying to pretend I wasn't rattled. Malcolm plopped down beside me with a tired groan. Long shift. I swear, if one more patient, I nodded, smiling faintly, but my mind was still spinning. What Jeremy had asked, that one question, kept replaying in my head like a song stuck on loop. He hadn't been angry when he asked it. Just honest. Too honest. I barely slept that night. I kept wondering if maybe I had misunderstood him. Maybe it wasn't as heavy as it had sounded. Maybe I was overthinking it. But the truth was, I wasn't confused. I knew exactly what he meant. I just didn't know what to do with it. The next morning, I found myself staring at my coffee like it might offer answers. Jeremy had always been quiet, thoughtful, a little too serious for his age. He was the kind of person who noticed when you changed your shampoo or when your laugh sounded different. He'd always been polite, considerate, even when I first moved in. It wasn't love at first sight between us. Far from it. But over the years, something real had grown. We weren't blood, but there was a closeness I hadn't expected. It wasn't maternal. It wasn't romantic. At least, I didn't think it was. I had always seen him as my stepson, nothing else. But now I wasn't sure how he saw me. Later that day, I found Jeremy in the kitchen, fiddling with the toaster like it had personally offended him. He glanced up, eyes guarded, and I realized he was just as unsure as I was. About last night, I started, my voice low. He didn't look up. You don't have to say anything. I think I do. We stood there in silence. He finally turned toward me, expression soft but unreadable. I wasn't trying to make things weird. I just needed to say it. I've been carrying it around for a while. I nodded slowly, my chest tight. Why now? He hesitated. Because I'm leaving soon. After graduation. And if I didn't say it now, I never would. There was a strange ache in my throat I couldn't swallow. So, this wasn't some impulsive comment. This had weight, thought, timing. Jeremy. I care about you, I said carefully. You're part of this family. I just need time to understand what this means. For you. For me. For your dad. At that, his eyes flickered, something between regret and relief. I didn't say it to ruin anything. I swear. I just needed to be honest. I wanted to reach out. I didn't. Instead, I stepped back. That afternoon, Malcolm suggested we go out for dinner. All three of us. Jeremy agreed. And as we sat across from each other in that quiet little Italian restaurant, pretending things were normal, I realized something. This wasn't going away. It had already changed everything. Dinner was filled with small talk, Malcolm talking about hospital politics, Jeremy asking if they still had his favorite hot sauce at home. I played along, smiling, nodding, laughing at all the right places. But I wasn't really there. I was watching Jeremy's face, trying to figure out what had shifted since last night. He seemed calm. Too calm. After dinner, Malcolm suggested we take a walk around the block. Jeremy passed, saying he had a paper to finish. I didn't push. The second we stepped outside, I felt like I could finally exhale. You okay? Malcolm asked, glancing sideways at me. Yeah, I lied. Malcolm had no idea. And I wasn't ready to tell him. Not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because I didn't even know how to explain it. How do you tell your husband that his son just dropped a bomb you can't stop thinking about? Back at home, Jeremy disappeared into his room, headphones on, door shut. I stood outside for a moment, tempted to knock. I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my coat and left. I drove across town, not really sure where I was going until I ended up in front of a quiet little cafe near the art center. There was one person I trusted to talk to, my sister Leah. She worked the night shift there and knew everything about me, even the things I hadn't said out loud. When she saw me walk in, her expression dropped. What happened? I think Jeremy, I paused, glancing around. I think he has feelings for me. She blinked. Like, stepmom feelings? I nodded. Leah's face tightened. Did he say something? I told her what happened, leaving out nothing, watching her process it in real time. So, what are you going to do? She asked. I don't know. Leah leaned in. You're not crazy, okay? You didn't imagine this. But this isn't something you can keep sitting on either. She was right, of course. But what terrified me was that part of me didn't want to shut it down. Not entirely. And that thought alone made me feel sick. Because the truth was, things with Malcolm hadn't been perfect for a while. The spark had dimmed. We were more like coworkers than lovers. Friendly, dependable, tired. And somewhere in that emotional gap, I'd started to feel more alone than I'd ever admitted. Jeremy noticed. He always noticed. That's what scared me the most. When I got back home, it was after 10. The house was quiet. I passed Malcolm sleeping on the couch, TV humming low. As I walked past Jeremy's room, the door was cracked open. He was sitting on the floor, sketchbook in his lap. He looked up when he saw me. "Hey," he said softly. I hesitated. "Can we talk tomorrow?" He gave the slightest nod. "Yeah, of course." I turned to walk away, but then he said something that stopped me cold. I didn't say it to make things harder. I just needed you to know that someone sees you. That hit something in me I hadn't touched in years. The kind of thing that doesn't just change a night, it changes the story. The next morning felt heavy before the sun was even up. I didn't sleep again. My mind wouldn't slow down. Everything Jeremy had said was still playing on a loop, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending it hadn't happened. By the time Malcolm left for work, I was already pacing. I didn't want to have this conversation, but not having it was starting to feel worse. I knocked on Jeremy's door. "Can we talk now?" He opened it almost immediately, like he'd been waiting. He stepped aside and let me in. I sat on the edge of the bed. He stayed by the desk. We didn't speak for a full minute. Then I finally asked, "What are you hoping will come from this?" Jeremy exhaled hard, running a hand through his hair. "Nothing. I don't expect anything. I'm not asking you to feel the same. I just couldn't keep pretending I didn't." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I saw how much weight he'd been carrying. This wasn't a crush. It wasn't immature or impulsive. It had depth, pain, restraint. "That's not nothing," I said. He nodded. "I know." The silence between us got sharp. I stood up, unsure what I even wanted to say next. "You didn't do anything wrong, Jeremy. But this changes things. We can't go back." "I don't want to go back," he said, almost too quickly. That shook me. "You're my stepson," I said carefully. "I've always seen you as part of this family. I need you to understand how serious this is." He looked at me, eyes full of something between defiance and heartbreak. "I'm not asking to tear anything apart. I just wanted to be honest. But I can't lie anymore, and I can't stay here acting like I don't see you for who you really are." I froze. "Who I really am?" I asked. "You're someone who gave up pieces of herself for everyone else. For my dad. For me. You stopped being seen a long time ago, and I saw that before you did." I felt that like a slap, because he was right. And I hated how right he was. The room felt like it was closing in. The air was thick. The moment too big. "I love your father," I said, but it came out quieter than I meant. "I know," Jeremy said. "And I'm not trying to replace him. I think I needed you to know that you matter. To someone. That someone sees you fully." I turned away, my throat tight. I didn't want to cry in front of him. I didn't want him to see how much of what he said landed in the places I never let anyone touch. Then I felt it, his hand, lightly on my shoulder. Just for a second. "I'll go back to school early," he said. "If that's what you need. I'll give you space." I turned around, and for a second, we both stood there in something completely unspoken but undeniable. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew we'd already crossed a line. Not physically, but emotionally. And there's no clean way back from that. Downstairs, the front door creaked open. Malcolm was home. Again. I heard Malcolm's keys drop onto the table downstairs. The timing couldn't have been worse again. I stepped away from Jeremy quickly, clearing my throat as I wiped my face with my sleeve. He backed away too, tension radiating from both of us like static. "I'll go to my room," he said under his breath. "No," I said, catching his arm. "It's okay. Just be normal." We walked downstairs together, carefully not too close, and found Malcolm pulling leftovers from the fridge like nothing was wrong. "Hey, I thought you were working a double," I said, trying to sound casual. "Got called off." "Budget cuts again," he muttered. "Honestly, I'm not even mad." Jeremy slid past us and disappeared into the living room. Malcolm turned to me with a tired smile. "Everything good here today?" I hesitated for a split second too long. "Yeah, fine." But I wasn't fine. Not anymore. That night, I went into Malcolm's study to look for an old folder I needed, something to distract myself. I was rifling through drawers when I noticed a manila envelope tucked in the back of the bottom drawer. No label. I wasn't snooping, not at first. But something about it felt off. Inside were printed emails, pages of them. All from one sender. L. Whitmore. I scanned the subject lines. About last weekend. You didn't say goodbye. Don't leave me hanging. I froze. The emails weren't addressed to Malcolm. They were from him. And they weren't about work. My stomach dropped. I flipped to the first one, dated from nearly a year ago. Casual at first. Friendly. Then flirty. Then explicit. And they hadn't stopped. The most recent one was from 5 days ago. I sank into the chair, heart pounding. Malcolm, my husband, had been cheating. Not a fling. Not a mistake. A relationship. Everything started to spin. The emotional distance. The long shifts. The forced family dinners. It all made sense now. And then came the real punch. In one of the last emails, Malcolm wrote something I'll never unsee. I think Jeremy suspects something. He's been acting weird around the house. If he finds out, it'll destroy everything. I couldn't breathe. Jeremy knew. That's why he'd been watching me so closely. Why he'd looked at me the way he did. Why he said he saw me. It wasn't just about feelings, it was about truth. He knew what Malcolm was hiding. And he hadn't told me. Because he thought I deserved better. I dropped the envelope, hands shaking. My mind raced with what this meant. Jeremy's confession. His timing. His decision to say it out loud right before Malcolm came home that first night. It hadn't been a coincidence. He wasn't just being honest. He was testing me. And now I didn't know who to be angry with, Jeremy for what he felt, or Malcolm for what he did. Or myself for not seeing any of it sooner. I stood in the dark room, staring at the drawer full of evidence, my world tilting underneath me. Upstairs, I heard the floor creak. Jeremy. He knew I knew now. And everything had just changed again. I didn't sleep. Again. At 6 a.m., the house was silent. But my mind wasn't. I sat at the kitchen table, the manila folder in front of me, untouched since I dropped it last night. I knew I had two choices, say nothing or rip the lid off everything. I wasn't sure which would hurt more. The sound of footsteps broke the silence. Jeremy. He paused when he saw the envelope on the table. His eyes met mine. No pretending. No running this time. You found it, he said quietly. You knew. He didn't deny it. He sat down across from me, shoulders tense. I didn't want to be the one to blow it all up. Then why tell me what you did? Jeremy's voice was low, but steady. Because I watched him wear you down. I watched you shrink for someone who didn't even notice. I thought maybe, if you knew someone saw you, really saw you, it might wake you up. You mean you. I didn't plan it to go this far, he said, almost to himself. But once I said it, I couldn't take it back. I shook my head. You should have told me about the affair. Not the rest. He looked at me with something almost like shame. I couldn't separate it anymore. The front door opened. Malcolm. We both sat up straighter. He walked into the kitchen in scrubs, expecting the usual. Then he saw our faces. The envelope. He stopped. What's going on? I stood slowly. You tell me. His eyes dropped to the folder, and just like that, the lie was over. He didn't even try to deny it. Just let out a slow breath, like a man who'd been waiting to get caught. Before you say anything, he started, I need you to know it didn't mean stop. I cut him off. Don't reduce it. Don't spin it. It's real. I read it all. He looked between us. Wait. How long has he known? Jeremy stood. A while. Malcolm's face shifted. So this is why you've been acting strange? Why you've been don't, I said again, sharper this time. This isn't about him. This is about you. No, Jeremy said. It's about both of us. I flinched. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I grabbed the folder and pressed it into Malcolm's chest. Read it again. And this time, understand that your actions didn't happen in a vacuum. You left holes. We all just tried to fill them. Malcolm looked like he wanted to ask more questions, but I walked past him, grabbing my keys from the counter. Where are you going? He asked. I don't know. I just know I need to go. Jeremy didn't follow. He just stood there, frozen. At the door, I stopped. I'm not leaving forever, I said without turning around. But I need space to feel something real again, without anyone else's guilt or confusion crowding it. And then, softer, to Jeremy, I'm not angry. But I'm not ready either. He nodded, and I left. Outside, the sky was still gray with early morning light. The street was empty. The air was cold. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to clarity. Everything wasn't fixed, but it was finally broken open. And sometimes that's where healing starts. I didn't leave forever, just for a few days. I stayed at my sister Leah's place, no big speeches, no breakdowns. Just space. Space to think. To feel without being watched. To let the noise settle. Leah didn't push. She just handed me tea and let me sit on her couch for hours, replaying everything, Malcolm's affair, Jeremy's confession, and the complicated in-between where I'd lost myself. It was hard not to feel like everything had collapsed. But the truth was, parts of it had been broken long before Jeremy said a word. His confession just forced it all into the open. 3 days later, Malcolm called. His voice was tired. Not angry, not defensive. Just quiet. I won't ask you to come back, he said. I just want to talk. When you're ready. And he meant it. So I did. We met at the same Italian restaurant where the silence between us had started. This time, we didn't pretend. We talked. Really talked. About how the distance between us hadn't started overnight. About how we both let resentment fill the silence. I made mistakes, he said, his voice low. But I didn't fall out of love with you. I just stopped trying. I didn't respond right away. Because even though he was sorry, it didn't erase the hurt. But I saw something honest in his face that I hadn't seen in a long time. Regret that wasn't about being caught, but about what had been lost. I'm not sure what comes next, I said. But I'm not walking back into something just because it's familiar. And for once, Malcolm didn't argue. He just nodded. As for Jeremy, we talked the night I came back. It wasn't emotional or dramatic. Just real. He was packing to leave for school early, like he said he would. He looked relieved to see me, but cautious. I meant what I said, he told me. But I know we crossed a line. And I'm not proud of that. I know you didn't mean harm, I said. But that line matters. We both need to carry it, not excuse it. He nodded. I'll keep my distance. But I hope one day you'll believe I cared about you in the right way, even if I didn't say it the right way. I do, I said, and I meant it. He left the next morning. No big goodbye. Just a quiet, take care, and the sound of the front door closing behind him. In the weeks that followed, Malcolm and I agreed to go to couples therapy. Not to fix things overnight, but to figure out if we even wanted to. I started journaling again. Seeing friends I hadn't made time for. Saying no without guilt. Little things that helped me feel like myself again. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. But it was honest. And that's what mattered. Because sometimes, the hardest truths don't break us, they wake us up. They show us what we've been missing, who we've become, and who we don't want to be. That's not the end. That's the beginning of something real. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Let me know in the comments, I read them all. And if this one hit you in the heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.